Well, good morning. I didn't put good morning on the screen today. Could be good afternoon. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to be on lesson 13.2 today. We just started our lesson over our section over geometry, and we were talking about Euclid. And basically that's what we learned was from what he discovered and wrote about in his book, Euclid's Elements. All right, so we're on page 256 at the bottom where it says lines and angles. So we're going to look at a few more terms and definitions today. Some of these you may know, they may be familiar to you. Some may not be. It may be review or whatever. If you know this really stinking well and you're just like, I'm not going to waste my time listening to this lady, that's fine. You can do the assignment page if you know it already. If you don't, listen. If you feel like you need review, listen. Okay. So remember yesterday we were talking about lines being an undefined term. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today, lines and angles. Okay. Notice you can use lines to describe various aspects of real life, from the shape of a mountain in the distance to that of a table to the incline of a tree. Now look at the top of page 257. Somebody is sitting there doing what I love to do, reading their Bible and drinking some coffee to go with it. Best ever. So what happens when two lines intersect? They form an angle. An angle is a fancy name in Euclidean geometry for the intersection of two straight lines. So if you're taking notes on a note page or note cards or something, you might want to write down the word angle and write that it is the intersection of two straight lines. So it could be any form. Let's see, we could do even another one. Let's turn this one. Okay. Well, I don't guess it's, there we go. Okay, we'll just do it this way. Okay, and you can write that down or whatever. It can be in any shape, form, or fashion. Okay, a clock is a good thing to think of when you're thinking of angles, because you know you have a clock and you have the hands on the clock and they're constantly making different angles. All right, now you call the point at which the lines intersect the vertex. So this right here, this section right here is called the vertex. You might want to write that down and show a picture of that. If you have many angles, then you would have vertices. That would be plural. All right. Now, generally you'll mark, you won't circle the vertex, but generally you'll mark it by, well, let's see, I don't know if I can erase that. Oh, didn't mean to do that. There we go. So, and to show the vertex, we usually show an arc in the middle of it. Okay, that's our vertex. And of course, angles can be, big, little, whatever. But nonetheless, where they meet, that's the vertex. All right, since lines can be used to describe so many different aspects of creation, so can angles. Just look around you for a moment. You're surrounded by angles. Everywhere you look, there's angles. We use angles to describe real-life intersections, so to speak. There's that same picture with those same intersecting lines showing where the vertex is. All right. Now, since lines and angles are so useful, it's important to learn to describe them. We call an angle formed by two lines that intersect to form a perfect capital L a right angle. So let me just show you this right quick. A right angle would be, well, let's move this one. Well, okay, so we're going to move this one, then we're going to form us another one, and then we're going to move this one. They don't really make this real easy, do they? There we go. All right. Well, that's not going to work. Okay, now we'll get to move her. All right. This, then, is a right angle because it forms a perfect L. Okay, so we call this a right angle. You might want to make note of that. squares, rectangles, they all have right angles. Look at your windows. Look at your doors. You probably have pieces of furniture, bookshelves, the computer screen. They all have right angles, so you need to mark that down. Now, angles that are smaller than a right angle are called acute. So this one would be an acute angle. And obviously, if you're a girl, it's easy to remember. It's such a cute angle because, you know, little things are just cute. So you can remember an acute angle is smaller than a 90-degree angle, or a right angle, I'm sorry. Okay, well, if you turn the page, we'll do a different one. This one would be called obtuse. Those that are larger than a right angle, these are obtuse. So you'll want to write those down. So at the top of page 258, there's your examples. Those are great examples if you want to write those down in your notes or on a note card or something. And anytime, now this right here actually is not correct. So let me erase these because we don't usually show the vertex of a right angle this way. Generally, we will show it this way. Not generally, but always. So that square, when you see this on an angle, that tells you right then and there that this is a right angle. There's no guessing. Okay? When you see this square, it tells you it's a right angle. Okay? All right. You can look around the room. You can find angles everywhere. Now, lines that form a right angle are called perpendicular. On the other hand, lines are considered parallel if they never intersect. The distance between them is always the same. So right in the middle of your paper on 258, you've got perpendicular and you've got parallel. Now there's an easy way to remember these. Okay? Parallel is spelled with two L's in it. They never touch. Those L's will go on forever in both directions and they'll never touch. You can think of them as railroad tracks. But parallel lines never intersect. They run side by side. They never intersect like the tracks of a railroad. So the word parallel itself looks like what it is. It's kind of like in literature you learn what the term onomatopoeia is. Onomatopoeia is when a word sounds like its sound, like zoom or boom. Well, parallel looks like a word that looks like what it is. And then if you can remember parallel, you can always remember perpendicular. It's the other. So look at the monitor shown there on the bottom of 258. It has two sets of parallel lines that are perpendicular to each other. Thus it forms four right angles. We call a shape with these particular properties a rectangle. There you are. It's got four sets or four right angles, and those right angles are perpendicular. They're caused by perpendicular lines. And notice the two lines on the right and then the two on the top run parallel to one another. So just that right there shows a whole lot. Now let's look at the gray box at the bottom. Remember how we said that the idea of sets is used all the time? Remember we were doing that back in, I think, chapter 12? Even when not mentioned by name. Well, we could think of angles as a set or collection. And acute, obtuse, and right are subsets within that set. Acute, obtuse, and right angles are just ways of further categorizing angles. So there's you a picture of it right there in the very bottom of 258, your set and subsets. Now let's move on to the next section. This is the last section of this one. As we begin exploring shapes, we need a way to refer to a specific angle or line within a shape. Saying the angle in the bottom left of the square, that gets old fast. Letters are typically used to label or name lines and angles. By placing a letter at the place where the lines intersect or end, we have an easy way to name lines and angles. So if you have there at the top of page 259, you see that line where it has a D and an E at the end? All right, So they've labeled that line, and there's two ways that you can name it. You can name it line DE or line ED. So when you would label it this way. You would take whatever letters there are, and because a line goes in both directions, you know, it goes this way or this way, it doesn't matter if you do DE or ED, but you would label it. This is the way you would label it. Does that make sense? This is the symbol for line, and then these would be the letters showing this is what that line is called. All right, now when you label angles, remember angles are two lines that intersect. All right, so here we have an angle on your page. I'm just going to kind of do the same one. They have an obtuse angle there, and they've labeled it ABC. Now, notice this. This line is line AB, or you could say BA, it doesn't matter. Okay? This line is called line BC or line CB. Any way you want to look at it, we're going to do it CB. Okay? But when you put these two lines together and they intersect, you then have an angle. And right there in the middle of your paper, it shows you the three different ways you can label an angle. There's three ways. Okay? This is the symbol for angle. You can label it angle A, B, C, or angle C, B, A, or angle B. These are the three different ways that you can label an angle. Notice if you do it with all three letters, the vertex must be in the center. Also notice when you label these, they all have to be uppercase letters. Okay? Notice you can also label it by the vertex, angle B. Okay? All right, let's look at lines and angles in a shape. The same conventions for naming lines and angles apply to lines and angles within a shape. So here we have a triangle. This is at the bottom of 259. Okay. Do you notice line FG? Do you notice line GH? What about line FH? See, that triangle is made up of three lines. Do you notice that that triangle has a right angle within it? That would be like taking this one here. It would be like taking this angle that I drew. Oh my gracious. This makes it so difficult to erase. Okay. That would be like saying, pardon me. Okay. Now the one on the paper is a little bit more skinny, but generally I make things fat. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, so we have line FG, we have line GH, and we have line FH. Of course, you can label those any way you want to. Notice that this angle, angle G, is a right angle. Okay? Now, you can mark this any way you want. Look at the very, very bottom of 259. There's where it says the marked angle would be labeled angle FGH or HGF or angle G. The vertical line would be labeled line FG or line GF. Okay, does all that make sense to you? All that comes together. All right? All right, turn the page to the keeping perspective. Now this says, just a convention. The methods that we use to name lines and angles are just conventions. That means they are agreed upon ways of communicating. Below are a few other ways angles have been described in the past. Okay, so there's you some little symbols there. Conventions like English and spelling rules aid in effective communication. The ones we learned in this lesson will ultimately help us explore and measure the earth. So being these are conventions, that means most everybody uses their geometry in this sense. There are other ways to do it, but for convention purposes, so that we're all on the same page, so to speak, we use these methods of labeling them and forming them. Okay? All right, so your assignment then is going to be worksheet 3.2, and it's front and back. Should be super, super easy. And down on part 4, you get to use colors or highlighters or markers. Yay, it's always so much fun to bring in colors there. All right, now you see what you can do on that page. If you need any help or you're not understanding something, please let me know. Otherwise, I think worksheet 3.2 should be pretty easy. I don't think I'm going to grade 3.2, but I might, but probably not. Okay, that's all for today.